Hello and welcome back to another Flash video tutorial.
I'm going to go ahead and get started by creating a new ActionScript 3.0 document. And before I begin, if you have noticed in where you've been saving your files, if you have these white files that are Shockwave Flash objects, the extension form is .swf. They're sometimes referred to as SWF files. These are the files that Flash creates when you run your program. So every time you press Control Enter, it makes this SWF file. It just puts it in the same folder as you had your FLA or your ActionScript document. So everything we've been making so far has been a Flash document. When you press Control Enter, it's a SWF document, and that's just how Flash works. So if you remember when I did the variables slideshow with all this stuff here, that it was a white file, it was a Shockwave Flash object, and that way I can share my documents without having people to have Flash. They don't have to open up, they don't have to see the timeline, they don't have to see anything like that. So in case you were wondering, but moving on. So I'm going to get started by creating a new ActionScript 3.0 document, and we're going to need three things for this video, three layers, excuse me. So rename layer 1 to Actions. We create two more layers. Okay, so Actions layer on the top. Then we want a layer called Art and a layer called Guides. So I'll get to everything in a minute, but right now we're going to lock our Guides layer and lock our Actions layer. On our Art layer, I'm going to use the rectangle tool to draw a red square with no fill, and make sure you do not have object drawing checked. This should not be dark like this, it should be light. And I'm going to click and drag and hold shift, and now my art layer, I have a red square. I'm going to turn this into a movie clip, and make sure your registration point is in the center for this, because I'll explain that in just a little bit. And I'm going to give my movie clip a name, let's say red square, right? Okay, so I've given my movie clip a name of red square. So in my library, it says red square. But this red square right here is just a copy of whatever I have saved in my library. This is just an instance of it. If I want to reference this movie clip that I have right here in my code, I have to give it what's called an instance name. So I've named it red square, but there's something, but what is this particular instance of it called? Well, if I click on my red square underneath my properties window and see there's a little box called instance name, I can give this movie clip a name so that I can call it in the code and I can do things with it. So I'm going to give it a name of, I'll just say player for now. So I have my red square movie clip where this instance is called player. This instance name thing kind of works like variables, as in you can only have, the name needs to be unique, and you can only use letters, numbers, and the underscore. So I'm just naming it player. We have player on the art layer. Now I'm going to go into my actions layer on frame 1 and tap F9 to bring up my actions window. And now I can access player. So to start, I'm just going to write out trace, write out player, just like I typed it in the instance name. And now when I run this, it's just telling me, well, hey, this is an object and it's a movie clip. We can do a little more than that. Let's have it show the name of our movie clip, which was player, because we named it player, the instance name. And the way we get this is we just put player.name. Every object and pretty much every variable you have has properties associated with it. So to access those properties, you just have to put whatever the name of your object is. In this case, it's our movie clip player, and then put a dot, and then whatever the property is. So now if I run this, it's going to say player in the output. If I click on my movie clip, change the properties to player, or the instance name to player 1, and run this, it's going to break because it doesn't have player anymore. So if I go back into my actions, tap F9 on frame 1, if I change this to player 1, now it's going to shout out player 1 because I changed the instance name. So moving on, how did I know that name was a property of movie clips. Well, I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to open up Google Chrome, and you can use Internet Explorer or Firefox, whatever you want. And I'm going to go to Google, and I'm going to type in AS3, which stands for ActionScript 3.0, which is what we're using. And I'm going to type in API. And some of you might be wondering what API stands for. API stands for Application Programming Interface. And what I'm about to show you, I've created a shortcut here on the L drive under Programming Class. If you ever forget, you can look this up. So I typed in AS3, so ActionScript 3.0, Application Programming Interface. And you see there's two links. I'm going to use the second one here where it says AS3 API Reference. And what this is, it's essentially a database or a guide to how every single object in Flash works. So a movie clip is what's called a class. So if we just go ahead and type in movie clip right here, you can see now there's movie clip underneath it. So I'm going to click on movie clip, and if I scroll down, it's going to show me every single property and some methods, which I haven't really gone over yet, in the movie clip that I can access. So I can get the current frame, I can do current label, scenes, all this stuff. But none of this stuff says name, right? So where's name coming from? Well, if I scroll up to the top, there's something called inheritance. And what inheritance is essentially a movie clip is a more complicated version of something else. So a movie clip is a more complicated version of a sprite. A sprite is a more complicated version of a display object container. Display object container is more complicated version of interactive object. And basically what it means is that whatever our object is, it's going to inherit all the properties of another class or our object. So where name is actually stored is under display object. So we have movie clip, sprite, display object container, interactive object, display object. So I just happen to know this, so I'm going to click on display object, and these are all the properties that are part of display objects. And because movie clip inherits display object, we can use any one of these in our movie clip. So we have, where is it? Name is here. So name is here, and this is how I was able to call name from movie clip. So it's saying its name. It's a type string, and it indicates the instance name of the display object, just like I was saying. So what else can we do? So we've gotten the name. Let's go ahead and look at some other things. So we have X and Y. X is the X coordinate on the stage, and Y is the Y coordinate. Not necessarily on the stage, but for our purposes, it's on the stage. So I'm going to get rid of this really quick. And just to prove that this works, I'm going to click on my movie clip here. And actually, before I do anything else, I'm going to save this. I have not saved yet. So I'm going to save this as instance names and properties video assignment. So VA, save, already had one. I'm just overriding it. So now I have this. After I click on my movie clip, in the properties window, you see there's X and Y. My X is 143.05, my Y is 135. What I'm going to do is, on my timeline, I'm going to go to my actions layer. I'm going to, actions layer and frame 1. Let me reorganize this. This is disgusting. I'm going to trace out, so I'm going to copy this. I'm going to trace out the X and the Y of my player 1 movie clip. So if I go ahead and save and run, that's going to say the instance name, which is player 1, its X coordinate and its Y coordinate. So 143.05 and 135, they match up. And the way that the coordinates work in Flash is that X, so I'm going to go to my guide layer now. I'm going to lock art, unlock guide. I'm going to go to my guide layer. The way X works, and I want you to do this, is X goes from left to right, and that was a terrible arrow, but X goes from left to right. Hold on, let me make this a little prettier. X goes from left to right, while Y, oops, I need to hide this real quick. While Y goes from top to bottom. So Y. So there we go. X and then Y. So now if I bring up my art layer again, I'm going to lock guide, unlock art, lock guides again. Now you can see if I put my movie clip in the top left, oh here, let me set this to 0, 0. It's in the top left. That's because X starts at the left, goes to the right. Y starts at the top, goes at the bottom. So starting at 0, 0, we're in the top left corner. If I change X to whatever the stage width is, which in my case I believe is 550, X is now all the way on the right side. So I'm going to set this back to 0. If I change Y to 400, Y is at the bottom. So basically, you have 0 to whatever the width of the stage is, and 0 to whatever the height of the stage is. So I'm going to use my text tool and change the color to black, and I'm going to write out these coordinates so that, oh wait, I messed up. I'm going to delete that. This goes on the guides layer. So I'm going to lock art, unlock guides, make sure I'm working on the guides layer, and I'm going to go ahead and type in X 0 here and Y is 0 here. I'm going to tap escape so that I'm no longer in my text tool, go into my selection tool, and now I'm just going to copy and paste this. Oops, Control C, Control V to paste. Where is that going? Okay, mine's going somewhere off the screen. So I'm going to Control C to copy, Control Shift V to paste in place, so just paste one directly on top of itself. And now I'm going to drag it over here. I'm going to copy and select both of these by holding down Shift and selecting both of them. I'm going to Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and I'm going to drag these down to the bottom. So remember, here X is 0, Y is 0. Over here, X is 550, or whatever your stage width is, and Y is still 0. On the bottom here, X is 0, because remember it's all the way to the left, and Y is 400. And here, X is 550, and Y is 400. Oops, not 4,000, 400. And that's just because of whatever my stage size is. So right now, underneath, if I click on my stage, my properties for the stage, the size is 550 and the height is 400. So I hope that makes sense. I'm going to lock my guides layer and unlock my art layer. Actually, no. I'm going to lock all my layers. Go to my action layer, click on frame 1, tap F9, and you see we have our player name, our X position, and our Y position. I'm going to create some more space, and I'm going to say the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually change the value of the X property. So let's set player1.x equal to 0 and then end with a semicolon. What this is going to do is it's going to set the player X all the way to the left, so 0. So wherever I have this movie clip on art, when I run the program, it's going to jump all the way to the left. So I'm going to run my program, and now you can see it's all the way to the left. But it's still showing, and only half of it is showing. Why is that? Remember when we set the registration point to be in the middle? And I can unlock my art layer and click on that here. I set the registration point to be in the middle, and I can tell by that circle, or sorry, not that circle, the crosshair there. Basically, whatever coordinates you tell this movie clip to go to, it's going to center it on whatever that point is. So if you put your registration point in the top left, wherever, if I set X to 0, the top left would go here. So because X would be all the way to the left, this would go from here to here. So it's important that you have your movie clip's registration point set to the center. So make sure the registration is in the center when you create a movie clip. So moving on, oops, I'm going to go back, I'm going to lock my art layer again, go to my actions frame, actions layer, actions frame, frame 1, whatever you want to call it. And now I'm going to set the Y. So I'm just going to copy and paste all that. I'm going to set the Y property to, I don't know, let's give it some random number. So let's say be, I will say 400. So that should be the bottom. So the bottom left is what should happen here. I'm going to run my program. And now the center of my movie clip has moved to the bottom left. Cool. But what if we wanted to have something directly in the center? Cool thing about this is that the stage itself has properties, so I can actually access how wide or how tall my stage is. And the way I do that, I just type in stage, all lowercase, put a dot to access its properties, and the property is called stage, oops, if I could spell, stage height. So you have to put stage, lowercase, the H capitalized, remember, camel case, stage height. This is just how it is, and that's not stage height, excuse me, X is left and right. So this should be stage dot stage width. Okay, so stage dot stage width will get however wide my stage is. In this case, 550. And if I were to, let's do the same for our Y. So dot Y is equal to stage dot stage height. So now our X should be whatever the width of the stage is, which is all the way to the right. Our Y should be whatever the stage height is, which should be all the way on the bottom. And if we run it, it should be on the bottom right now. Cool, bottom right. But let's say, oh, that's where, hold on, that's where my stupid things went. So I'm going to delete this thing in the middle here because I didn't mean to put that there. So going back. So right now I've set it to the bottom right, but let's say I want my stage or my object to be directly in the center of my stage. Well, what's the center point, right? It's exactly half of what the width is. So I'm going to take this and divide it by 2. Same thing with the height. So now my X coordinate will be directly in the center of the stage, and my Y coordinate will also be directly in the center of my stage. So if I save and run, now my square is in the center of the stage. Alright, so now just to prove a point, I have set my stage size to 1000 by 1000, and if I run, it's going to center my object in the stage. So I'm going to put this back to what it was. So it was originally 550 by 400, and I'm going to move this somewhere over here, and now we can continue. So some of the other properties we can change. Oops, I'm going to lock my art layer again, go into my actions layer, frame 1. Some of the other things we can change are the scale of our movie clip. So I'm going to go ahead and say player 1 dot scale X, so I can change the scale of my X. So I'll set it equal to 2. 1 is normal, 2 is 2 times the size. So if I save and run, now I have a rectangle that's been scaled along the X axis. So the other option is player 1, dot scale Y equals 2. So the other option is obviously change the Y, and now my rectangle is twice as big as it was before. So remember that you can go into the API reference, oops, which I already had open, and you can look at all of these properties. You can mess around with them. Alpha is one that you might be familiar with. So for now, just make sure you understand the point of accessing properties by using the dot or the period or whatever you want to call it. And you can sometimes set these properties. You can pull them back. You can do a lot of things. So I'm going to do a quick recap of everything you should have, and then I'm going to do one more thing, and then this video will be done. So on your guides layer, you should have this text indicating the coordinates for the 4 corners of your stage. So top left, X and Y are 0. Bottom right, X and Y are going to be the highest values they could possibly be according to your stage width and height. And then you want these 2 drawings here saying this is the X, this is the Y. On your art layer, you should have a movie clip, and its instance name should be set to player 1. And then on your actions layer, on your frame 1, you should have your actions, and you should have, and let's go ahead and comment this out so we know what's going on. So right here, what we're doing is we're setting the player to be in the center of the stage. So let's say set the, I'll say player to be in the center of the stage. Remember, we use the dot operator, get the property, the x and y coordinates of player 1, and then we're setting it equal to stages property stage width divided by 2 and stages stage height divided by 2. The next thing we're doing is we're changing the scale of player 1. So change scale to be 2 times the size for player 1. And I'm actually going to type player 1 up here too, just to keep it consistent. So what we're doing here is we're setting player 1 scale x to be double what it normally is. We're saying the scale y to be double what it normally is. So it's going to end up being twice as big as it was before. Then down here, we're writing out the properties of player 1 to the output. So for here, we're doing the instance name. For here, we're doing the x coordinate, and here we're doing the y coordinate. So I'm going to save, and let's put a label at the top. So let's say instance names and properties VA, and one more thing, access properties using dot. So that's about it. And if you have any questions on this, ask me. And remember that if you ever want to look something up, you have the link to the API reference saved on the L drive. So, thanks for watching.